This is the Scary Movie Clubcast.
Live from the clubhouse, this is Scary Movie Clubcast. This is Nadine.
And this is Amanda.
And tonight we watched Lisa Frankenstein. I was not as excited about it as I thought I was going to be. I enjoyed certain aspects of it, but I feel like it could have been a lot funnier. I would only give it 2.3 repurposed members.
So low.
It wasn't that great.
I loved it. I'm going to give it 4.5 severed members because I love a severed member in a movie. It makes it so much better. And I loved it. The only thing I didn't really like is the Sprouse child. Which one is that? One of the twins.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't have cast him.
Yeah.
I just don't find him very attractive. That's the main problem.
Yeah, that is a problem, though. I mean, you know.
That's why it doesn't get a full 5.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like the premise, and I found a lot of it could have been great, but it didn't feel fully fleshed out to me. And I also feel like there could have been way more jokes. Like, there were some jokes, but I feel like I could have been lousy with laughs. But yeah. So today in the clubhouse, we are doing something a little bit different. We have decided that we're going to try something out and see if you guys like it. It's going to be a theme under Virginia villains. So we take terrifying true crimes that have actually happened here in Virginia where we live and just kind of deep dive into them for you guys. And so we're starting off today with the first one, and it is a biggie. It is, so it starts off with Treva Nicole Terrell Gray, who she was a mother of 4, had recently gotten out of jail for like drugs, something like that, nothing too bad. Her family had like rented her this place to live. She got a job at a telemarketing firm. She was like really starting to turn things around. It was good. And then her boyfriend, Ricky Gray, gets out of jail. And he was in for more, also drugs, but also violent crimes as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they do. And she recommended him for a job at the telemarketing place where she worked. He got enrolled in like electrician school, and they got married like very quickly after he got out. Yeah, her family wasn't hyped about it. Weird, right?
Sometimes you're just a sucker for love. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, what can you do? I will say she was 35 and he was 28, so a bit of an age gap, but really not that big of one. One that we wouldn't even mention if it was the other way around. Like the fact that it was mentioned, I was like, okay, it's only 7 years. They're both grown adults. And so they're living together, and then just a little while after Ricky Gray gets released from jail, what is technically his nephew, but they were like raised more similar to like cousins because his nephew's actually a couple months older than him.
Oh yeah, one of those.
Yeah. But so family, which honestly from here on out, it's like I'd rather just refer to them as cousins because I do feel like it's weird to like give him the uncle moniker when, I'm sure they didn't think of each other that way.
Yeah.
But his name is Ray Dandridge, and he gets released from jail. So Ray's dad is like trying to help him out. He lives in Philadelphia. I think that she's more in like Pittsburgh area. And he's like, okay, you can stay with me. I'm like, Pepper, you have things to say?
He says, not touch the belly.
He's like, I am, flipping these houses. You can work with me. That way, like, we can get you back on your feet.
Yeah.
And he's like, that sounds fine and all, but actually I think I'm going to go stay with Ricky and his wife. And within 10 days of getting there, Treva will be found dead.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. He gets there, and essentially these two guys are just, like, bad for each other. Like, they bring out the worst in each other. He makes a joke about Treva being fat.
Oh, rude.
Yeah, it is rude. And is like, don't you remember, like, how much fun we used to have? Like, the type of girls we used to get?
Great. And
he thinks that Ricky is making a joke back and is like, we should just kill this one for the insurance money. And then he gets, supposedly, because, I mean, you're just taking the word of a killer at this point, but supposedly Ray gets woken up in the middle of the night, and Ricky just hands him some gloves and is like, you gotta come help me finish this up.
What?
Yeah, he had started beating her, and
okay, but wait. Here's the question: was there even any insurance money?
He never got any. I don't know whether or not there was, but he wasn't the beneficiary at the very least.
Because, I mean, it's not like everyone has a life insurance policy.
Yeah, these guys are not smart. I mean, they're not good at killing, they're not smart, and it shows all throughout everything that they do. And so I don't know that he even actually thought that there was insurance. I don't know what his thoughts were. But yeah, he starts beating her. She's screaming. Supposedly Ray is just standing there, like, not helping with the killing of her. And he's using a pipe, by the way. Like, he's beating her, he's choking her, and he's using a pipe. And supposedly that's all Ricky, and Ray's just standing there. Okay. Says Ray.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he gets woken up.
Yeah.
He started beating her. I mean, you would hope she would have screamed.
Okay, the thing is, though, that... Well, Ricky told her if she made too much noise that it woke up the kids, that he would kill the kids, too. So, I mean, I'm sure people can't help but scream, at least to some degree,
at least
so
the
I'm
first
sure.
time. The first blow, you would think, like, oh, gosh.
Exactly. So, who knows what they're doing. But, yeah. So, after 10 days of him being there, her body gets found in, like, some gravel lot. And the day that she went... Well, there were conflicting stories on this. It's either the day that she went missing or the day that her body was found. Her mom saw scratches on Ricky's arms. Obviously defensive wounds from Treva trying to save her life.
Yes.
The police do not investigate this as a homicide.
Oh, what?
Yep. Even though her head is, like, beaten in, it's clear that she was murdered. Like, so clear. They're like, but this woman was on drugs.
Okay.
Yep. The police are just the literal worst, and they're racist and bad people. And so, yeah, so her death gets labeled as suspicious. But so
suspicious?
But so that's Treva, this is Ricky, and this is Ray. Yep. Just a real hot mess. But this, even though it takes place in Pennsylvania...
Yeah, and I was wondering where the Virginia part was coming in.
This is the beginning, because this happens in November. So it's not technically part of what we're going into, but in my mind, it's like an inciting incident.
A crime spree.
Yes, the Richmond spree murders. They are horrifying. So it starts on December 31st, so New Year's Eve of 2005, so we're going into 2006, and this guy, Ryan Carey in Arlington, had just pulled up to his parents' house and was, like, getting out of his car, and a car pulls up next to him. Ricky and Ray jump out, not that he knows it's them, and they demand his wallet, all his money, whatever he has. He instantly just starts giving it to them, and even though he's complying... Again, this is according to Ray. Ray says that some woman, like a block away, was looking at them, like saw what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so then supposedly Ricky just starts going crazy and stabbing him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
and according to
because you saw there was a witness, so you're
and
make the crime worse.
Yeah, you're making it worse. And the guy was already literally just take it and go. You could have been gone so fast.
He was doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. Wow. And then...
I mean, in a carjacking, you just give up your stuff. Like, you don't try and save it.
Carjackings go wrong.
I know, but
so much of the
if
time.
you can get out of the car and get away, that's what you should do.
I would say... I personally, if I could drive away, I would drive away faster. I mean, because literally, it is crazy how often the people do just give it, and they still kill them. Like, so much of the time.
I mean, that's just the escalation of crimes, is once you go to jail for a crime, you're like, well, if there's no witnesses, no one can say that I did it.
Exactly. Which, I mean, these people, they must have been feeling bold, too, because they had already killed Treva, and, I mean, the police questioned them, but then they were just like, And, I mean, no real investigation was done.
What happened to the kids?
I assume that they went with her mother, or, like, her family. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even realize, because there's not that much written about her, so I didn't even realize that the kids were in the house until I listened to an interview with Ray where he talked about Ricky, like, threatening her with, if you scream and wake the kids, then I'll kill them too.
And they're Ray's kids?
No, these are Treva's kids. She had 4 kids.
Someone else?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Because they hadn't been together that long. Because they met while they were in jail through, like, a prison pen pal program.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't get together until they were out of jail. Yeah.
Oh, prison pen pal program? Where people in prison are talking to other people in prison?
Yeah. I mean, they're going through a lot. Like...
I mean, does that sound like a good idea?
I mean, obviously, it depends on the instance. Obviously, this one turned out bad. But I will say, I mean, there are so many, like, support groups where, like, it seems really important for people who are going through traumatic things to be able to talk to other people who have gone through similar traumatic things.
You would think maybe someone who's not in jail still, or someone who's, like, out and who's, like, kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's, like, usually someone who's been in recovery for a while is the person who you go to and is, like, your mentor.
Yeah.
Not someone who's still in the same exact position you're in.
Yeah. I don't know. Hard for me to say, but that is, like, how they met and stuff, which I will say, we'll get into that part later. I don't want to, like, give any spoilers. Okay. But yeah, so in Arlington, he was stabbed, like, viciously. Ryan certainly, I think, made it seem like both of them had done the stabbing, although I don't know, like, how much he could be aware because of how vicious the attack on him was. Ray says that he, like, got back in the car and didn't stab him, and was just like, we gotta go. Who knows? Ray's always
He's trying to make a deal. That's why he's saying this stuff. He's like, I didn't do anything. I just happened to be there, not help.
Yeah, I can't stand either one of them, so I am definitely not thinking any merciful thoughts towards Ray. But I will say that, let me see. But so, yeah, so he stabs him, like, a crazy amount of times in the, like, head, chest, in the mouth, in the arms, and then they take his wallet and run. And Ryan is able to, like, fight off enough to get to the parents' door, and then his dad comes out, calls 911. He goes to the hospital he's in a coma for 2 weeks, and then he's in the, like, hospital for 2 months, and he never regains full function of his right arm.
Oh, yikes.
That's a picture of Ryan Carey, like, a court drawing. Mm-hmm. He was a witness at the sentencing trial, and when they did the part where they, like, showed his scars and stuff, and as he talked, it was so upsetting and so graphic, apparently, that it brought one juror and several people in the audience to tears.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so, like, truly upsetting. Also, you know what's interesting about him is it wasn't until after they were, because obviously they were caught, that's how we know all these things, yes. I don't feel like that's much of a spoiler, but the way that they were caught for him was that they had already been caught, and then when he saw their pictures, he, like, called it. He was like, these are the guys.
Yeah, those are the ones.
They did it. And then the police were like, did you? And they were like, yeah. Okay, so that's Ryan Carey. That's on New Year's Eve. Then, on New Year's Day...
Not taking the holiday.
No. They're busy. They got things to do. This one's really upsetting. So this is the Harvey family. This is, like, a Richmond family that it was, like... they had some notoriety in the community because the wife, Catherine Harvey, was the co-owner of World of Mirth, which is a toy store in Carytown. Yeah. With another woman. So woman-owned business. Love that.
Oh, wow.
And the husband, whose name I'm forgetting right now, which is insane because I've read it 10 billion times. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
The first crime, you said that was in Arlington?
Yes, yeah.
And so
well, technically the first crime was Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah. I'm talking about the first Virginia crime. Was in Arlington, and then they came down to Richmond.
Yes. Oh, I think it's Brian.
I was just going to start throwing out white guy names, but I thought it was a little presumptive to assume it was a white man.
Oh, it was.
But then you said Brian, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Catherine Harvey co-owned World of Mirth in Carytown, and then Brian Harvey is actually part of the band House of Freaks, which Yeah, not like crazy famous, but they did have 3 singles that charted. Like, they got to open up for Blondie at one point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they weren't nothing, but not like famous.
Yeah, not in 2006.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
opening for
well,
Blondie.
they weren't doing it then.
Yeah.
This was it. The band had already broken up in like 1995. But
Tracks.
yeah, but either way, so some notoriety surrounding the family. At that point, I think he was working on like technical stuff for Henrico School Systems or something. Yeah, like he had like a desk type job at that point. But they lived in like a nice house. It was near Forest Hill Park.
They're paying for rental space on Carey Street.
Yeah. It's mad money over there. Also, it drives me a little bit insane that his band is called House of Freaks and her store is called World of Mirth, because House of Mirth is like my favorite book. And so it's so hard for me not to like combine the two and say them wrong. But yeah, so they were living in this nice house with their 2 daughters, Stella, who was age 9, and Ruby, who was age 4. There's a little picture of Catherine and the girls.
And Pet? Is that a kitty cat?
Guess so.
I'm gonna believe it's a cat.
Yeah, that's a whole picture of the whole family. And there they are. So every New Year's Day, they would do a chili cook-off. And so they woke up in the morning, and Brian had actually been out performing a show the night before, so he didn't get home till like 2 a.m. Stella was off at a sleepover, and so when Brian did wake up and like go downstairs, Catherine was in the kitchen starting to cook stuff. He went outside to grab the paper, and he just went ahead and left the door open because they were having a party later that day. They apparently like pretty often would just leave their door open and just put the screen door.
Yeah.
I would never, ever, ever recommend it, ever. I don't know why people do it.
On January 1st?
Not everyone gets as cold as you, man.
So cold. The heating built to the roof.
They weren't, I mean, listen, they got that Carytown money. They weren't pressed. But, so then, unfortunately, unbeknownst to them, Ricky and Ray, and now a new woman who's in their life, her name is Ashley Baskerville. They're all just driving around, literally just looking for a house to rob. That's basically why they went into this nice neighborhood. And boom, that door's open. So Ricky and Ray.
The middle of the day?
Well, I mean, I think it was like the morning. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, but still, like, daylight
like fairly
hours.
I guess so, but like fairly early morning on January 1st. So mostly everyone's been up late the night before. Like, not a super early morning day. But yeah, people are bold with stuff like this. You should always keep your doors locked. But yeah, so Ricky and Ray bust in the house. Ashley is acting as lookout. They go in and first they bind Brian, of course, and then they bring all of them down to the basement, which they might have bound them all in the basement too. They do eventually bind all of them, and then there is a knock at the door. Stella was coming home from her sleepover. Yeah. So they unbind Catherine, and they, like, make it clear to her, like, if you tell them anything that's going on or, like, try to leave, we will kill, like, your daughter and your husband. She goes to the door. She looks, like, terrible. Like, her friend who's, like, dropping off her daughter can tell that, like, something's wrong, but she says that she is, like, feels sick, basically. And Stella instantly just, like, runs right in the house and goes down to the basement because that's where their toy room is.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And her friend, who's, like, there with her dropping them off, tries to run in, too, and go to... And her,
absolutely not.
Yeah, no. Her mom, like,
we're all sick.
Practically body checks her and gets her back out the door.
If I could have done anything, I would have stopped my daughter from even coming in the house and told her to just go back to your place.
That's what I would have done. To me, it blows my mind. There is just 0% chance that I would have let my daughter come in that house.
I would have been like, why don't you guys play a little bit longer at your place? We'll get you later.
Yeah, I would have been like, I don't feel well. Come back for the party later. Yeah. There's 0% chance that I would have let my daughter walk in that house.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in an impossible situation.
Yeah. And I mean, if you don't know who you're into the door for, and she just blast right through you, you know?
Yeah.
To get
I mean,
inside.
she did know, though, because she was like, this is the time that, like, she told them, like, when the door knocked and they started freaking out, she was like, it's my daughter. Like, this is the exact time she's supposed to be dropped off. Like,
oh, well, maybe if she told them that that's my daughter, if she didn't come in, it would have, I don't know, maybe she was worried that if she didn't have her come in, that then all of them would be dead. I mean, that's what happens, I assume, anyway. But she might have thought these people weren't going to kill them.
Yeah. Anytime that people are complying in this way, where they're letting themselves get tied up and stuff like that, it's because they think that the people are going to let them go at the end. That is very rare, that people get tied up and then let go at the end. You'll notice you don't hear a ton of true crimes where the people are getting untied by someone else. Like, that's not...
And then they untied them and just left.
Yeah. It's the coroner doing the untying.
Yeah.
Very upsetting. But so Stella runs down, and then the friend, even later, she didn't really, like, clock it when it happened, but, like, once everything came out, the friend was like, I do think that she tried to make, like, a hand motion to me of, like, a gun, or, like, that someone was crazy. Like, she's like, I couldn't really tell at the time.
I mean, yeah, you're a little kid. You just had fun with your friend. You wanted to come over.
Well, no. This was the adult one. It was the mother and the child. Because the mother was also, like, thinking that they would come in for a minute and, like, chat. Like, it was...
No, the girls had so much fun. Da-da-da.
Yeah, but not so much. So I feel bad for that woman, because I'm sure she feels terrible.
Oh,
like, yeah. Just horrible. Also, what a terrible lookout Ashley was. Like, I love that she was just watching all this happen.
She's like, I'm looking out.
Yeah.
I don't know. No one said to be a siren also.
I know. It does make you wonder, like, what would she have done if it was police? Drive away, I'm
sure.
She for sure would have just left.
She definitely would have left. They would have been on their own.
Oh, man. She's a terrible person.
I mean, yeah, she's not...
I did see one thing that tried to say that Ashley used to babysit them and, like, pointed them out as, like, a rich family in a mark, but I don't think that's true. That woman, I think, was just talking crazy and didn't check her sources at all. I'm 90% sure that it was just them driving around and then they saw the open door, because I don't know how Ashley would have known this family. Like, that was one of the main things that they struggled with later, was, like, connecting the families, because it didn't make any sense.
I mean, yeah, it's, like, rarely ever, like, a random person, you know? Like, there's always some sort of connection to know that that's, like, a good place to go, or, like, with violent crimes, it's usually someone you know.
Exactly. But so... once Stella got inside and they all went back down, and, like, Catherine was back downstairs, too, Ray was, supposedly, because a lot of this is coming from Ray, upstairs ransacking the house, looking for stuff to steal. Things he finds, a laptop. He takes a plate of cookies that someone had brought them that had, like, M&Ms in them. And then they do end up taking their wedding rings also. But, like, very little, honestly.
That's all they looted?
They don't get much. And maybe, like, a bottle of wine or something. They don't take much from this house. My God. And so once they are back downstairs, or, well, Ricky is downstairs alone at this point, supposedly. And the girls are, like, starting to freak out.
Yes.
Very fair. And Ricky and Ray supposedly walk off kind of by themselves and talk for a minute. And they decide that they've seen too much of them and that they can't live. As if they would ever...
Like, that was even a discussion. Like, that family was not going to make it.
Yeah, well, I think the part that, like, blows my mind about it is the idea that they would be able to ID you, but how would they ever find you again? You don't even live in the state. Like, they don't know you. You could have easily just left. They had a party later that day. People would have come and found them. Like, you could have left them tied up. Oh, man.
But, I mean, that's not what... It's Ray and Ricky.
Yeah.
Ricky wanted to kill them.
I will say...
They probably both did, but...
Ricky was on PCP.
Oh, so yeah, he was definitely...
Yeah, so he may or may not have been hallucinating.
Yeah.
Who's to say? I will say, I do think, based on everything else that I've read about them, that this family would have died either way.
Yeah.
I really think, whether or not he was on PCP. But, so, then Ricky comes back over and slits the father's throat first. And then that doesn't kill him. So he grabs a hammer and and starts, like, beating him in the head. He tries slitting everyone's throat. It doesn't kill anyone.
Because he's bad at it.
They're bad at killing. That's what we learned from Treva. It never changes. They are not good at killing. Their murders are very torturous, and I don't even know if it's intentional that they're torturous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And so he tries slitting all their throats. Doesn't work on any of them. And just starts, like, beating them all, like, very viciously. Then he takes what I have to assume is Catherine's easel that she has in the basement, douses it in wine, and sets it on fire.
Okay.
Yeah. Once they've set the fire, they take their laptop, cookies, and wedding rings and hit the road with Ashley.
Oh my gosh. They must... I can only imagine Ray had to also be... Like, they had to all been on more drugs than just, like, Ricky being on PCP. To not, like, get more things. Like, your whole intent, allegedly, is robbing. You only got 2 wedding rings, a laptop, and a bottle of wine, and then some cookies for snacks. Like, this family probably had more jewelry, like, more, like, other valuables and things. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think it's possible that maybe it wasn't, like... Maybe they weren't a very materialistic household. So I don't know, like, how much they had.
But, like, even,
I would
like,
have thought that they would have had, like, a debit card
their
or
wallets,
something. Yeah.
cash, like...
I mean, yeah, in 2006, they probably still had, like, at least some cash.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ew. A very senseless murder.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I do think it's also possible that maybe they got... It's hard to say, too, though, because at this point, they were robbing every day. Not necessarily murdering every day, but robbing every day. And so they would later give as gifts to people, like, DVDs players and, like, game systems. So they were stealing those from somebody. So I don't know if any of that also came from the Harvey house or not. Who knows? But so... Then they leave, they're gone, and Brian's old bandmate from House of Freaks, because it was just a duo, so it was just the two of them, so they were very close. He gets there in the afternoon with his daughter.
Oh.
Yeah. And...
Oh, no, does she go downstairs first?
No. The house is on fire.
Oh, right.
The house is very much on fire at this point.
Forgot about that part.
So, he calls 911, and then when the firemen get there, like... There is zero visibility. I mean, the house is, like, very much on fire at this point. But some very brave firefighters do go down. Like, they're... Because, you know, at this point, the bandmate's just standing out there being like, I don't know where the family is. Like, there are 4 people. Presumably could be in there. Yeah. Once one of the firemen gets to the basement, he essentially trips over one of the bodies. And, you know, he can't see anything, so he has no idea, and he just picks them up, carries,
and he's like, oh, God.
Yeah, 2 of them end up getting, like, pulled out. It's Ruby and Catherine, and once he has her outside, there's, like, he immediately just goes to do CPR, and he notices that there's a sock in her mouth, and he thinks, like, oh, was she doing that to, like, protect herself from the smoke? And then he looks down and realizes that she's bound.
Yeah.
And that's when they're like, oh, we are in a murder scene. Like, and so they call the police.
So much worse.
Yeah. These murders were absolutely horrifying. Poor little Stella, the 9-year-old, they literally found smoke in her lungs.
So she hadn't died yet.
She had not died yet. And she was, like, under the futon. So, like, kind of presuming that she squirmed her way under there.
Hide.
Yeah. It was horrifying. These people were terrible at killing. Like, I honestly don't know if they intended to make their murders, like, as miserable and painful as they were, or if it was just stupidity, like, but they were terrible. So that's the news that's going on at this point all over. Like, this was big news in Richmond, like, huge when it happened, of course. And so, Oh, they did suspect the bandmate at first because he was the first one there. Yeah. And then it's really weird too. Like, they actually, in the band, they have this one song that's called, like, Hey, 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 Hey. And in it, there is, like, this weird lyric. Let me see. I know I have it somewhere. Oh, where it says, heartbroken woman in basement begs him for mercy. And then there's, like, a knife sound effect.
Oh.
It's on their last album, Invisible Jewel. It's very weird.
That is a weird coincidence.
Yeah, just happens to be a very weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Brian wrote those lyrics. The other guy wasn't even a lyricist, like didn't really write any of the lyrics. So Brian wrote those. Just a very unfortunate, happens to have been a thing. Also, though, I will say, the cops, when they first got there, didn't think it was a robbery, which makes no sense to me, because I cannot possibly imagine that Ray was, like, being tidy while he was looking around for stuff to steal. And also their wedding rings were missing, so like you would think that that would instantly let you know that it was a robbery.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe the cops were like, they took it as a trophy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get, but you would think, though, if you're like trying to think whether or not it's a robbery, that would lead you towards that.
Yeah.
But so in my mind, I saw people list those lyrics as, like, part of the reason that they were suspecting him, and I was like, they didn't even think it was a robbery at this point, so I don't know that they were deep diving into the lyrics of a C-list band. Like, I doubt that.
Yeah.
So, who knows? But it is a very weird, unfortunate coincidence. Let's see. Okay, so next, was the Mason family. So at this point you have Ricky and Ray and Ashley.
Robin.
Yes, and Ashley was Ray's girlfriend, and like that's why they had come down. But then Ashley kind of like said something where she was like, oh, I've never had like two boyfriends at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Ray was like, no. And so then she was just Ricky's girlfriend. And at that point, Ashley introduced him to her friend LaToya, and LaToya basically becomes Ray's girlfriend. Although I will say, it's not like Ray was like, Ray's just a jerk, because he himself is not trying to be faithful. He just doesn't want, like, his girlfriend to be with anyone else. His girlfriends to be with anyone else. Because in the interview I heard him say, when he talked about, like, in between one of the robbings, he was like, I was at a motel with one of my girlfriends. And I was like, man, the fact that you'll just use that phrase so casually. The worst. But so, LaToya and her mom pretty quickly become, like, very suspicious of this trio in general. Like, LaToya's mom had already hated Ashley, like, thought she was a terrible influence and was not a fan of her hanging out with her daughter. And then when the boys started coming around, it was, like, tricky because they always, like, treated her with respect and stuff, but she just, like, had this iffy feeling about them. And so they go to see them on, like, January 2nd, and they bring her mom a plate of cookies with M&Ms.
Stop it right now.
It's so upsetting. They ate those cookies, too. It's so creepy to think about. Like, ugh, what a nightmare. But so then, supposedly, they all, like, the four of them, that weird two couples, go out to dinner. And then after dinner, they're, like, saying that they should rob somebody. I guess they had spent their money on dinner. It was time for new money.
Yeah.
And so they're, like, looking around, and LaToya supposedly gets very uncomfortable and, like, just wants to go home and, like, tells her mom what happened. And then they go off by themselves on January 3rd, and they find Roy Mason and his wife. What they do is they send Ashley up to the door. She asks for directions, and then they all, like, burst in the door to this poor elderly man.
Oh.
Yeah, he is 75 years old. And they, like, knock him on the couch, and then they are, like, planning to, like, tie up his wife and him, and one of them's, like, going through, ransacking, and Ashley's using the bathroom very casually, taking a DVD player she wants, like, whatever she sees that she wants. And the old man is like, please don't tie us up. Like, my wife is disabled and I care for her. If you tie, like, no one's coming here. If you tie us up, like, she might not make it. And they are moved for whatever reason, and they don't tie them up.
It's because they're so old.
And they just leave.
Oh, wow.
Very odd. I don't understand these people. Yeah, really doesn't make much sense. But so yeah, then they just leave without hurting them. Very odd. Then the, like, last terrible thing within the spree murders is on January 6th. So at this point, they have been telling LaToya, like, I think Ray kind of, like, casually mentions to her, like, oh, I think Ricky's getting, like, tired of LaToya. She's been wanting more money and blah, blah, blah.
I mean Ashley.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, getting tired of Ashley. And LaToya kind of just, like, hopes that this is sort of, like, joking, basically. But then they come by on January 6th and they're like, oh, we are leaving to go back to Philadelphia for a while. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And she's like, okay, where's Ashley? And he's like, Ashley gone bye-bye.
Yeah, Ashley's dead.
And she's like, And then they leave. And she essentially calls the police and is like, please go do a welfare check on this person. Like, I don't think that they're okay. And so the police go and they find a horrific scene. Oh, yeah. Like, yeah, it's very upsetting. Ashley is tied up. I mean, they're all tied up. She has a sock in her mouth, a grocery bag tied on her head, and she's bound with duct tape, like, all over. And her mother, Ashley Baskerville Tucker, has a gag in her mouth. She's stabbed in the chest. Her eyes are duct taped. And then her stepfather, Percy L. Tucker, has a sock in his mouth and is duct taped shut and has plastic wrap also. All of them slowly suffocated. All three of them. Yeah.
Terrible.
I will say there are some killers who, and this is not the case in this instance, they definitely meant to kill them, but there are some killers who I think accidentally kill with duct tape because they don't realize that, like, that really does suffocate someone.
Like, oh, if I covered their airways, they can't breathe. That's weird.
Yeah. It's insane. Now, I will say, so Ashley had this idea where she was like, you know what? My stepdad, who I hate because apparently he used to rape her, which is a very valid reason for hating someone. Yes. But she's like, he keeps money in the house. What we should do is you guys should tie me up and, like, say that you need ransom, and then he'll get the money because she doesn't know where it is, I guess. And so that's the plan. So, like, going into this, that's what she thinks is happening. And then Ray says that it was just, like, a spur-of-moment decision right in the end, that they were like, no, we're just gonna kill them all. Like, we're not doing this. I don't even know that they got the money.
Yeah, also, I mean, Ashley doesn't like her stepdad. Who's to say Ashley's stepdad would pay a ransom?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
it's usually a two-way street.
And either way, she liked her mom.
Yeah.
Like,
probably shouldn't like her that much.
Yeah, I think she's just a horrifyingly bad person.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she knew what they did to that family and those children. She didn't care. Like,
do you think she knew about,
the wife?
The first victim in Pennsylvania?
The wife?
Yes.
Yeah, I bet. Because these guys they're pretty braggy. They aren't pressed. Like, they don't seem to think that anything bad could ever happen to them. Yeah. Like, yeah, I think so. If I had to guess. And I certainly don't think that it would have mattered to her either way. She clearly does not value other people's lives.
But, I mean, man, I don't know why you think you're better than anyone else.
Yeah, I don't know why she thought she was safe. I can't imagine. It's insane. And then the police are like, can we tap your phone and have you call Ray?
To LaToya.
Yes, to LaToya. That way we can try to, like, track them down. Mm-hmm. They had also stolen the stepfather's car. Mm-hmm. And so LaToya's like, yeah. And they're like, once you get them on the phone, try to get a confession. Like, try to get them to say what happened. And
so what did happen?
Pretty much. And the guy just repeats. He's like, Ashley gone bye-bye. And
but, like, how?
Exactly. And he's like, can't say that on the phone, boo. It's like as if he knew, almost. It's weird. Well, he certainly didn't do anything to protect himself or anything. They can trace the phone call, but not all the way. So, like, they can tell that they're in, like, a suburb of Philadelphia. And so at that point, they send the police out there all the information about the car because they're like, these men are so dumb. Like, I bet. Mm-hmm. And it is. The car is just sitting out in front of Ray's father's house.
I mean, they're in a different state now.
Yeah, everything's fine. Who would ever turn on them?
Who would have guessed that they would have gone back to their hometown?
Yeah, why would anyone have a problem with murdering children? Why would anyone be upset by their friend being killed? Yeah. No one.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so one thing that LaToya said that I thought was interesting was she was like, she dug a hole for, talking about Ashley, she dug a hole for her family and she fell right in there along with them. So, once they get to...
LaToya's mom's like, I told you that girl's bad news.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that is, like, obviously Mary and Percy and then Ashley. Now... Oh, when Ashley was found, she had Catherine Harvey's wedding ring on her finger that had been, like, specially designed for her by Brian. So, like, a very recognizable ring. Just a terrible person. Like, can't feel sad for... Yeah, anyway. So, then on the morning of January 7th, they do, like, a raid on the house. Ray instantly surrenders.
Yeah, I mean, he instantly rolled over on Ricky, no problem.
Exactly.
You've given all the deets.
Yeah. And then, instead, Ricky is hiding in the basement behind a water heater with a drill in his hands, supposedly. Kind of, like, according to a cop. Now, what I did think was funny was the cop who was, like, describing this was like, yeah, he got somewhat bumped on the head with a shotgun. Like, when they talked about him,
we just tapped him. It was an accident. I didn't even know he was behind the water heater.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Oh, man. So, yeah. That is how they get brought in, basically. And then, yeah, they very quickly just start telling everything that's gone on, which is... ironic, because they will then later go on to plead non-guilty. There's, like, so much evidence.
I'm not guilty, but the other guy, he's nasty.
Yeah. There's literally such an insane amount of evidence. Like, in their possession, they have the laptop that was the Harveys and Brian Harvey's wedding rings. They don't even go and sell these things, which to me is crazy.
I mean, what's the point?
Yeah. Also, like, get them out of your possession. Like, why are you keeping them in your possession so long?
They're not good at crime.
No, they're not. They're not smart. And they have shoes that have Brian and Stella's blood on them. Like, so much proof. Like, you wouldn't have needed the confessions.
Walk around with bloody shoes.
Yeah. So for them to then both plead non-guilty is just wild. And so...
non-guilty, the judge just starts laughing.
Basically. And so then Ricky is being charged first. They basically see Ricky as, like, the mastermind, and so they want to, like, move forward with his trial first.
Mastermind's too much credit.
Well,
Instigator, maybe.
Sure. And it's clear that it's not going well, his trial. And Ray is watching this. And then
Ray's like, what details can I give to get things lighter on
Exactly. Me? So then, before closing arguments are done in Ray's trial,
he's like, I will testify against Ricky.
Well, I mean, that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
They have Ricky dead to rights. But for a plea bargain, they're willing to give him life in prison without the possibility of parole. Because remember, this is when Virginia still has the death penalty. And
still?
Not anymore.
When did they get rid of it? Recently?
We were actually one of the first... We were, like, the first southern state to abolish the death penalty.
I thought...
But we were second highest state in the amount of people we had killed, second only to Texas. Oh, and so I was like, this is a pretty good description of Virginia, I feel like. Where, like, we try to be progressive and, like, with the times, but also real southern justice.
Wasn't the DC sniper, the Beltway sniper, wasn't he tried in Virginia specifically because we still had the death penalty at the time?
I mean, that was a long time ago, Amanda.
It was around this time.
Yeah. The death penalty existed at this time.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
And so he did not want the death penalty.
Okay.
Right. And so that's why he pled guilty, and for that was given, like, a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ricky, on the other hand, sentenced to death for the murder of those two girls specifically. Like, that's the ones that put it over the edge.
I mean, children will do that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane to me. Like, how could you, like, a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old? It's insane.
Bebes.
Yeah. And, like, you brought that 9-year-old into the house. You could have literally told her, like, go up there and tell them not to bring her in. Like, tell them to take her back. You could have done that.
You could have.
You could have had, like, sent the 4-year-old up there, too. No, 4-year-olds don't know what they're talking about. Like, oh, man. But anyway, so he is found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. He and several other inmates that were on death row actually file a lawsuit against Virginia for the way that they're treated, for like how much time they have to spend in their cells, like they don't get access to like family visits and things like that the way that they should, the way that like it is like against their fundamental human rights. That lawsuit will ultimately be won, but not until Ricky Gray had already been executed. He tried to apply like to the Supreme Court and to the governor for clemency, but Governor McAuliffe basically was like, no, dude, I feel like you had a fair trial. Like, this is what it is. And the Supreme Court, I think, responded back with, like, a one sentence. Like, but it was all, like, up until, like, the hours of his exit. Like,
no, thank you.
Yeah, like, it was the type of thing where, like, Governor McAuliffe was like, I mean, I have a phone next to me. I'm always ready for their call if they call. But, like, yeah, they did not. And so during all that, when he was, like, trying to get a lesser penalty, like get the same penalty as Ray did, he like put out an apology to the families.
Okay, it feels like a little too late.
Yes, although I do wonder if like some parts of him were moved. So here's the apology.
I mean, he probably would have sobered up. Presumably he's not on PCP while he's in prison.
Probably not on death row anyway. I'm sure it's harder. But here's the apology.
It's never left my mind because I understand exactly what I took from the world. I'm looking about two sisters. Reminded each time I talk to Tia that this is what I took from the world. You know, the potential for greatness and, you know, kids.
But so, his attorney, one of the things that he had specifically challenged was the mode of execution. They were doing lethal injection, and they were going to use a drug called midazolam, and it had come under fire recently because of supposedly problematic executions in other states.
Yeah, there have been a lot of botched executions.
Yeah. Now, I will say, people who were present at Ricky Gray's execution, there were some of them there who had, like, been present at other executions, and they did keep the curtain closed longer than they normally would, and, like, they reported seeing, like, some weird things, and an anesthesiologist, like, sort of analyzed what they had told him, and he was like, well, what you're saying, like, it is possible that he had not totally lost consciousness. They were like, but what you're describing does not sound like pain. Like, it doesn't seem like he could feel physically like the pain of what was happening. So I don't know. No, I don't think any of us really know like what it felt like. But so he didn't want lethal injection. Supposedly he wanted something else. But I mean, I don't know how much. Like, I think a lot of it probably more so had to do with just trying to stay the execution.
Yeah. And I don't think most places don't offer alternate choices because the alternate choices are considered even less humane.
Exactly.
It's like the
firing
chair,
squad.
Firing squad, like hanging.
Yeah, he wanted firing
guillotine.
squad, supposedly. Or I saw one thing that said that he wanted firing squad and one thing that said that he wanted electrocution. Who knows? Either way, this is what happened. And so this was in Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia, and he chose to have no last meal. When he was asked if he had any final words, he said nope. And his time of death was pronounced at 9:42 p.m. And I will say, in that same video where they like were requesting clemency, they had his nieces talk in the video and like his sister. He had an exceedingly traumatic childhood. I mean, like, horrifying. He was raised by his mother at first, but then sent off with his father and then sent back to his mother, and neither home was good. His you know what it is? In the end, they got back together, I think is what happened. And that was honestly, like, almost worse. He had an older half-brother who raped all the children in the house, like, constantly.
Gross.
Like, basically, if you came to the basement, he was going to rape you. And his father was extremely abusive, like, even had a belt that specifically had Ricky's name on it, and would do similar stuff for, like, all the kids, basically.
Yeah.
Ricky wet the bed until he was 13.
Oh, yeah.
Which is because he's being sexually abused.
Trauma.
Exactly. But so every time that would happen, he would get so severely beaten.
Yeah.
And so he started being on drugs at the age of like 11. Because he had started being raped at the age of 5.
The trauma and then just the humiliation. It's like, it's just this horrible cycle. Because it's like, and it's already bad enough, like, for a kid. Like, it's already humiliating that they've, like, wet the bed, especially when they get older. And then, like, to be punished for it on top of it. Like, the fact that it happened at all was punishment enough, honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. No. There's no...
need
to me,
punish
there is
it.
literally no age where it's appropriate to punish someone for wetting the bed.
Yeah,
That's
no.
an accident.
Yeah.
Like,
It's literally called an accident.
Yeah.
You had an accident.
Exactly. Like, I will say, I don't think it's punishment to make them clean it up themselves if they're at a certain... Because there is, like, this one iffy age where some kids, like, decide that instead of taking the time to stop and go to the bathroom, they're just gonna choose to have an accident.
Once they're older, like, I don't want to wake up and clean your sheets when you wet the
Well,
bed or something.
and no one has to know if you
Yeah.
just go do this.
So I'm just gonna teach you how to use the washer and dryer, and if you happen to wet the bed, you can just throw those things in there.
Yes. But yeah, his sister, and she was only 10 at the time, so I mean, she was also very young, was like witness to when these rapes started when he was 5, and like had tried to tell the brother to stop, but then he started also raping her.
Well, yeah.
And so yeah, it was just a menace and like a terrible childhood. Like, let me see, I know one of the psychiatrists said something interesting about it. But of course I don't know where I put it in my notes. But he, like, described his childhood as sexual slavery. Like, that you really couldn't describe it as anything else. And so he had been using PCP, like, since he was, like, 11, basically. I mean, I don't know if it started that early. I'm sure started with marijuana and then moved
11-year-old
on.
even get PCP.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I guess. What kind of high is PCP even? Because I just know people get very violent on it.
Yes, it can be a very violent one. It's like a hallucinogenic high, so you don't quite know what's happening. Imagine if you had all the disorientation of mushrooms with all the aggro, like, energy of cocaine. Like,
No.
that's kind of how I picture it. I haven't been on it, but that's how I picture it from the descriptions that I've heard. And so, you know what did kill me too was then, sorry, bad choice of words in this episode, but was then when they were describing the execution and, like, the people who were trying to make it seem like it was, like, a botched execution and, like, well, which I'm not convinced that it was.
Yeah.
But then also I heard someone else that was, like, talking in a podcast about it too, where they were like, dude, even if it was a botched execution, if you're trying to make me feel bad that this guy felt a little bit of pain during his death
of botched executions.
yeah, like, they were like, you're not gonna convince me. But the people who were trying to make it seem like that were like, this was like a healthy, you know, youngish man. And I was like, healthy? I was like,
he's been on PCP since he was like 13.
Yeah, I was like, no. I was like, you're not gonna convince me that his body was just unscathed from that.
If that's your vision of health, I hate to see what a sickly person looks like to you.
Exactly. Just wild. Oh, man. And so Ray Dandridge is still serving. He hasn't died yet, basically. That
wasn't that long ago, even. I mean, it doesn't feel like that long ago to me, but...
Yeah, no, 2006.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago, for sure.
And he was, like, in his 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, he was young when they did this. So... This is just, like, the album covers for the band, House of Freaks. They put out 5 albums. So that is Brian. And no, for people who can't see my finger, because it's not part of
sunglasses.
Yeah, the one without sunglasses is Brian. Oh my gosh, the guy with sunglasses, he's like the drummer percussionist. In so many of the interviews, he had sunglasses on and like a bandana.
Guy, you're talking about your murdered friend. Can you be a little...
Oh, no.
Oh.
He was talking about
Oh, not the band. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
No, interviewing him about him finding his friend's family dead. I'm like, what?
No, I couldn't find any interviews about that because I did want to, because I saw this one thing that didn't match up with anything else where it was something that they had put out on Oxygen, and it was like this woman investigator who had been on the case, and she was talking about like interviewing him, and she made it, but again, this didn't match up with anything else I saw, so I don't know where they got this information, but she was saying that he tried to tell them that he went into the house that was on fire, yeah, to like look for them, and that he like said that he went in the kitchen, and what she said, which again doesn't match up with anything else, is she was like, and he tried to say that he didn't see anything in the kitchen, but the gas stove was on, like had a fire on it, and so like you would remember that. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't think that the gas stove did. I think that they started the fire in the basement and then left. Like I don't think that they started the additional fire in the kitchen. Oh, maybe, but I think she was just cutting up the vegetables at that point. So I don't know. But so that, like, essentially she was saying it, like, in the same way. It very much reminded me of, have you ever seen The Investigator, who was the one who was there at John Bonet? And whenever she talks about the father, she, like, just is like, I knew he was guilty. And it's like, okay. Like, I don't, off nothing. Like, you're an investigator.
You're like, he was a man, so.
He gave her a look. But so yeah, here's one thing that I do think is interesting, is that they had this one song that they put out that was called 40 Years, and the year that this murder happened in 2006, Gilmore Girls had that song on it. The Troubadour plays it in like season 6, episode 20, I think. And so it's just like, I assume that they must have been doing it as someone that works on that show must have been aware of this in some way, I think, because otherwise I can't imagine, like, how you would, that would be too weird of a coincidence, I think.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I will say, the band was, like, big enough that this was a story in Rolling Stone. Oh, wow. Like, and before the people were caught, like, the same week it happened.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, yeah, the band was not, like, hugely big in Richmond or anything, but it seems like they did fairly well in California. And those years next to them are the years that they put out those albums, just so we know. Oh, and this person in a dress right here, that's Brian. In the bottom left corner one.
What's that album called?
Tantilla, which is the name of a dance hall that used to exist in Richmond and was torn down in, like, 1969. So they did that as, like, a little homage to it, I guess. Oh, man. They would do the weirdest things in interviews, too, where, so his bandmate, whose name I can't remember, something Hoyt, he would, be dressed up all silly, or to me silly, with, like, his bandana and his glasses, and then what Brian would do is he would just spout these, like, random lies, where I guess he was just, like, being sarcastic as a joke, but what was funny to me was his friend often, it took him a second to be like, wait, really? And then he'd be like, oh. It's like as if he was like, oh, you're doing that again. Because one of the things that he tried to say was that he had, like, graduated first in his class at Harvard, and
you went to Harvard?
Yeah, exactly. That was his friend. and then he was like, yeah, and he was a rocket scientist chemist guy. And then here's what I thought was funny that he said is he was like, he worked on the Challenger, but he got fired when it blew up.
Oh gosh,
and that was so bad. And then he's like, then he lost his job, and that's how he got into rock and roll. And then the bandmate, and I thought this was funny, he was like, yeah, I thought it was rocket roll. So stupid. They're so dumb. And they were asked after they came out with their second album, Tantilla, because it was House of Freaks, then Tantilla, then not House of Freaks. This one was named Monkey on a Chain Gang, and then Tantilla, and then All My Friends, and those were in the same year, which is wild to me. And then Cakewalk, and then Invisible Jewel. This last one's not an album cover, it's just a picture of the two of them. Okay. But so when they were asked after their second album, like, are you worried about, like, the sophomore jinx? Brian was like, no, because that first album wasn't really received that well. Like, he's like, we can't really fall from grace.
Yeah, we weren't really going anywhere. We're just We're just going.
Exactly. They did have a song, and so I pulled like a little clip of it that I thought was interesting for this, where it's called Remember Me Well.
When I lay down my head, bound for heaven or hell, after all's said and done, please remember me well.
But so I listened to a lot of their music this morning as I was getting ready, and it's not bad. Like they were a pretty good band, I think. Okay, so one thing I meant to mention earlier and I forgot was that so obviously Ricky had been raped a lot in his childhood, like so much. And then Ashley supposedly had been raped by her stepfather. And then his wife Treva, when he was asked why he murdered her, one of the reasons that he gave was that so she had been raped in prison by like one of the police people. Yeah. And so he said that she just kept talking about that. So I just think it's interesting that he like
He's trying to say he was triggered.
Well, no, I think he was. I mean, because some of these murders obviously didn't have to do with that trigger, but I do think that, you know, that does take a psychological toll on someone, and it doesn't, like, everything he did is so wrong, and I do think that the punishment that he, like, I think it was totally earned.
I mean, again, presumably the rest of his siblings who were abused by that brother didn't go on to murder a bunch of people.
Exactly. But so I just think it's interesting that, like, these people who then were talking to him about being raped, I feel like it's like as if his rage turned on them too, like in a similar way to like, I think he felt rage towards himself for like having been a victim of that, which obviously he shouldn't, but I mean,
there's
often.
Like a lot of shame involved, so he probably was like, I can't have her talking about this because then they'll know that it happened to me too.
Yeah.
And then he'd be embarrassed.
And then it's like these two families that were murdered, you know, they all had like socks in their mouth, and that is like a trigger for him, because when his brother used to rape him as a child, he would stuff a striped sock in his mouth specifically to like muffle his screams. And so I do think that all of that is interesting. And then I do think it's interesting too that like he would always get raped in the basement of his house. And then it's like a basement is where he did these like horrible Harvey family killings. And then he hid in the basement, and that's where he was caught.
And like true basements aren't totally common in Virginia. Like it's not a good idea to have a house in this area.
Oh yeah, because hurricane and flood. Yeah. Very true. Well, I wonder if they are like true basements.
Yeah. Well, like I have friends who have like a true basement, and bad hurricane comes in, that thing is flooding. They have to get the pump going. I remember one time it was like during one of the big hurricanes back in the day, where like there's literally just like water like coming through the walls of the basement because the ground was so saturated with water.
Because I mean, some people would call this a basement.
Yeah, but it's not. This is obviously not like a true basement. It's only half. Half.
What do you call a half one though? I wonder. Because I mean, you know. Yeah. Same thing in my house.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of split levels in Virginia.
There are.
I guess that's what you call it.
Yes.
Sometimes we stumble upon the truth. Oh, man. But so I do think that his band is interesting, you know, just to kind of, like, remember them. And then it's tricky with the Baskerville Tuckers because, you know, people talk a lot about, or, you know, it's upsetting, obviously, to think of, like, other victims not being remembered as well, especially when there's like a race difference. But I will say that in my mind, I'm like, well, the only person that I really feel bad for in that situation is the mother, because Ashley's a horrible person, and if the stepfather was raping her, then I'm not sorry for him either.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to think of that, but so this is a picture of Lydia and I at World of Mirth in Carytown. I was wearing my Miss Piggy shirt, and then I saw this Kermit hat, and I was like, oh, gotta get a picture of this. Lydia and I were walking around Richmond putting up comedy show posters. It was fun, and got her some rolled ice cream. She was so happy. But so, friends of the family, the Brian and Catherine Harvey Family Memorial Endowment was created by their friends and family to provide music, visual art, and performing arts in Richmond in Richmond, in the greater Richmond area, you can visit the Community Foundation website to make a donation if you would like to, just as like a nice little way to remember them. And if you're ever in Richmond, you can visit World of Mirth. It is like a fun toy store. It is very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, like I almost never actually buy anything when I go in there because it's not cheap at all, which is, I mean, it's in Carytown.
You gotta pay Carytown rent.
Exactly. Yeah, makes sense. Could go for some Carytown food right now. They got good food out there. I could go for some Zorch pizza. That's what I would get. And then like a cupcake
Greek on Cary?
or
Oh my gosh.
I'm hungry. But yeah, so that is the first in our possible Virginia villain series. I will say, not my favorite to put together. It's so depressing.
Yeah,
all the true crime stuff always is. And so you guys would have to really, really like it for there to be more of this type of episode. But if you do, then use your words because we aren't mind readers. All right, you guys, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Scary Movie Clubcast, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We'll see you next movie night, and don't forget, there are 42 days till Halloween.
Bye.
Bye. That means 42 days from now we'll be in New Orleans. New Orleans.
New Orleans.